Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. So just before I begin, a few points to introduce myself to you all. And the introduction will be perhaps slightly odd. Just to let you know about myself, I am half Egyptian and half English. And so the Egyptians, they've been gifted with, and I'm sorry if there are any Egyptians here, but the gift of the gab. And so we can speak for quite a duration of time without much preparation. And so you have to forgive me if I delay my speech slightly. And the other half, English. And so my English seniors, you have to forgive me, but perhaps slightly frank and can be offensive. And I say that because there are some things which may come across from that which I say that may be offensive to some. And so I have to apologize beforehand, because my purpose here is not to offend. My purpose here is to talk about da'wah from a grassroots level based upon experience that is not necessarily my own. We have on average, as a minimum, on average we have at least 10 shahadas every month. And that's a minimum. Sometimes it goes up, but usually does not drop below 10 new Muslims. And so I am going to present our methodology at the Lewisham Islamic Center. How is it that we bring these people to Islam? And that statement in and of itself is slightly perhaps, it's a slight misconstrue of the reality, because it's not actually we, the center, but we'll get into that inshallah. And so the first point that I have is perhaps the most important point, which is to understand and to know the needs of the community. That's the first and foremost point. And what is meant by understanding and knowing the needs of the community? Because, and again, here might be some of the offense, sometimes we think in a very insular way. And when we talk about our communities, we talk about our ethnic communities. We talk about our theological communities. We talk about perhaps our local communities. But within our masajid now, we are at a place where we need to start thinking globally, but nationally before globally. And so when we say our community, what do we mean by that? We mean our English community, our Welsh community, our Scottish community, our Irish community. If we are working in Ireland, for example, we have to start thinking about those who we want to attract, not those who are already going to be attracted to the masjid anyway. And very often we think about those who are already attracted to the masjid. They're going to come, and we focus on them. We don't think about those who are not yet attracted to the masjid. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. And this is a very instructive verse. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, we have not sent a messenger except with the tongue of His people, so that He may relay to them, clarify to them. And we can look at this sometimes at a very surface level, shallow level. Tongue, language. No, because the language is the key to the culture. The language is the key to the mindset. The language is the key to understanding how the emotions of a people work. And so we have to start thinking about those who we want to bring to Islam, and what is it that will attract them? How can we target them with our da'wah? And so there are some points. Number one, the culture. When a non-Muslim enters into our masjid, is our masjid culturally relevant to them? Do they feel at home in our masajid? And if they do not, I believe we have a problem, because we are in the UK. And so if a native person from the UK enters into a masjid in his homeland, he should feel at home, because Islam is for him. Rahmatan lil alameen, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says that the Prophet was sent as a mercy to mankind. Islam was sent as a mercy to mankind. But unfortunately, many of our masajid, when we enter into those masajid, they do not feel very homely except for the ethnic community that populate that masjid. And that's a big problem. It's a big problem, whether we like it or not. And the second, the mindset. And so listening to Ustad Hamza and Ustad Adnan, alhamdulillah, it's very refreshing to hear the mindset, understanding the philosophy of the UK, understanding the cultural aspects of the UK, understanding how people think. And if I were to ask a question, what is it that brings the majority of non-Muslims into Islam? Many would assume it's the theological arguments. But in fact, a large amount, if not the majority, they are drawn in through the spirituality aspect of Islam. Something connecting with their heart. The third, with al-lisan. And again, these are scattered thoughts, if you like, because of the time constraint. What works, what doesn't work? Have we actually taken a survey? For example, have we surveyed the UK? What is it that's bringing people to Islam? What's pushing them away from Islam? And trying to apply this within our masjid. The second part of the talk is to look at this maybe in a slightly more detailed approach. And so, as we said earlier, when a person enters into the masjid, how do they feel? We want the non-Muslim, and I'm talking about non-Muslims here. We want the non-Muslim to feel at home. We want a welcoming environment. What does that mean? Ethnically. A welcoming environment ethnically, where it is not a place that has become an ethnocentric culture center. This is problematic, where you walk into a masjid and the masjid feels like it's a clubhouse for an ethnicity of whichever ethnicity it is, whether it's Pakistani, Bengali, Somali, Arab, doesn't matter. If a person walks into a masjid and it feels like some sort of ethnocentric clubhouse, that's a problem. Because Islam is rahmatan lil alameen. And just on that point, we have a great opportunity here. The Sahaba, remember, they struggled and strived. They put their lives on the line to take Islam into new nations. We are here amongst the people, and the people accept us, generally speaking. Are we doing the same? The second point about being welcoming, theologically welcoming. We have to broaden the horizon. We should not make our masajid places for these intra-wars that pop up occasionally, or maybe perhaps too often. No, it should be a place, Ahlul Sunnah, Islam, simple. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's what a person needs to save himself. The third, culturally, age-wise, incorporating all ages, gender-wise, and this is a big issue, gender, that we have to open our masajid to the women. Women have a place in the masjid and they play a key role in the masjid. They are the nurturers of the future generation and they tend to the current generation. And so if we do not have a spiritual hub for them, it's going to impact the future generation. We're talking about du'at, raising du'at. The second point, and this I'm going to focus on a little bit more, and I'm trying to be brief because my time has been reduced, so I have to blame the organizers for that, my apologies. But the second point is nurturing the spirit of da'wah. So nurturing the spirit of da'wah. I said earlier, we have. But the reality is, it's not the imams that are doing the work. It's not. It's the community members. The community members are the ones who are bringing people to Islam. How? So Ustad Adnan, Ustad Hamza, they were focusing on perhaps a more external form of da'wah, talking to people about Islam, engaging as a da'i. But there is another type of da'wah which we can encourage every single Muslim to engage in, and that is the da'wah that the Prophet ﷺ was utilizing even prior to understanding that he was to be a prophet. The da'wah of akhlaq, the da'wah of praying in front of non-Muslim friends. There is an individual, just to give you a picture of what this looks like, there is an individual who came to the masjid to become Muslim, and I asked him, what is it that brought you to Islam? He said, I was working with a young man, and he mentioned this young man's name. He said, Irfan. And he says, I don't know where this man is now. It was 10 years ago. He was speaking to me 10 years ago. And I was so amazed by his dedication to prayer. He would pray at work. He would not allow anyone to backbite in front of him or gossip in front of him. He said, it struck something in my heart. 10 years later, he entered into Islam. He said, since that day, Islam was in my heart. And so, encouraging our community members. What does this mean though? This means that we incorporate Islam into our lives externally and internally. We raise an awareness to our Muslim community members about their character and conduct outside, when driving, when littering, when speaking, when engaging with others. This is all da'wah. All of it is da'wah. And so if we want people to come to Islam, we have to open our masajid to them, and the people that come to our masajid have to be the ushers that guide them to those centers of spirituality and iman. It's very important. And then there is an aspect which is to be discussed, and again, I'm trying to be as brief as possible. There is an aspect which has to be discussed, and this is a very important aspect. And in fact, it could even be argued it's more important than bringing the person to Islam. The process of looking after the person after they have become a Muslim and safeguarding them. And what does this look like? Spiritually, emotionally, physically. And there are, unfortunately, and as I said, some may be offended, there are unfortunately individuals, and they are sick individuals, to be frank, within our community that target new Muslims. They target new Muslims, and in particular, targeting new Muslim women, revert sisters. And this is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Individuals who do not care about the well-being of the individual, nor do they care about the well-being of Islam. Because what happens is this lady goes and tells her family, tells her friends, and a very bad image of Islam is portrayed. And, we can sit and argue, yes, but non-Muslims do this, and we can talk about who's better, etc. But the reality is, we have a framework of revelation. We know right from wrong. We're better than those who do not have a framework of revelation. Our standards should be high. And safeguarding of new Muslims is very important. And in order to achieve this, you have to have members of the masjid, staff members, and more particularly imams, who are accessible to the people in the literal sense, but they are also accessible to the people in their demeanor, in their character, in their ability to sit and to listen, in their ability to tend to the problems. And so the masjid needs to be a place which provides pastoral care. And I believe my time is up. And so just to conclude, I will leave you with a question. And it's a question that I often find myself being frustrated by. And again, forgive me for the frankness and the offense that may be caused. Blame the English side, inshallah. Are we really, really concerned about da'wah? I often ask myself, are we as a community concerned about giving da'wah? Because if you look at us from the outside, it doesn't seem to be the case. And I'm talking more about within the circles of da'wah, within the masajid, amongst students of knowledge. And the example is, we argue about intricacies of tawheed, yet we neglect those who have no tawheed. We argue about the start times of Ramadan, the moon sighting, yet we neglect those who do not even start to fast in the month of Ramadan because they have no Islam. We argue about the intricacies of Mawlid, yet we neglect those who do not follow the Prophet ﷺ, full stop. We spend our time debating the intricacies of halal and haram, sometimes even debating issues which are so insignificant on the ground that relate to salah and tahara and so on and so forth, yet we neglect those who have no salah. And so if we really ask ourselves, are we really concerned with da'wah? Because da'wah means focusing on that which is the most important, and then you follow. What is more important? A person who has Islam without the intricacies, or a non-Muslim who has no Islam? And on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and I'm talking to myself before anyone else, we may stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a non-Muslim may say, that man knew me. That man knew me, and he did not call me to Islam. What's our answer? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us and overlook our sins and make us from the best of du'at, those who follow the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.